Hey, this is John McEnroe, and we're here at We Are Tennis, and we're here to talk about Roland Garros.
Boris Becker is with us. He's listening to you. Hey, Boris, we spoke to Boris earlier this week.
This could be Boris on the phone. Hold on a second.
It's probably, go ahead.
Boris? Raphael? No. Oh, okay. Sorry.
So not Boris, not Rafa.
No, unfortunately, it was someone's just wanted to sell me a MasterCard or something. I don't know.
Okay. All right. So he'll call back later. Anyways, nice to have you with us. Thank you very much. Where are you in the world right now?
You know, I'm in Los Angeles. I played an exhibition in March. I was getting ready to go to Indian Wells. Suddenly, that event was canceled. I miss New York, but I've been here the past couple months. You know, all things considered, I'm one of the lucky ones in these crazy times here. You know, I'm feeling for a lot of people in our country and the rest of the world. It's just absolutely insane what's happening. First with the pandemic, and now we have riots. So praying that everything turns out to be as good as possible and things change for positive. That's hopefully what we all, I believe, hope will happen here, and I assume the rest of the world. And from that, hopefully, tennis will come back stronger than ever as well. Because yeah. I miss seeing it.
Well, we all miss it. We all miss it. Nico Mary was suggesting that maybe it was Nick Kyrgios on the phone calling you.
Yeah. He doesn't want to get coached. He just wants to have a couple of beers.
I see. Nice.
I'll do either one. Either one's okay.
Yeah, you're good with both, even together, actually, right?
Of course.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Coaching while having a beer. So yeah, Roland Garros taking place in spirit for these 2 weeks. We are now. It's Thursday of quarterfinals.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's really weird. It's really weird. Must be for you. It must be really strange because this is. Because you were there, you lived it, you're there every year. It must be very odd for you to be home at this period.
Well, I feel more for the players, obviously, and the organizers and the people that it really means, you know, the most to. I mean, I'm lucky. I was able to participate many times and played the tour for 15 years, and I get a chance to go back and, you know, play a couple matches, the seniors doubles, and commentate. Love to be a part of it, but I'm sort of I don't have as much at stake. So the idea, everyone's sort of banding around ideas. What do we do with this event? Do we play without fans? They're thinking the same thing at the U.S. Open. People seem to be, I'm a sports junkie, starving for sports, wanting to see sports, basketball, hockey, football, soccer, you name it, trying to figure out a way to get back healthy and safely. But the idea of playing without fans seems tough to me. I know it would be weird, but if the alternative is not at all, it would. I certainly understand where the players are coming from, wanting to try to figure out a way to do this. The organizers, people are tearing their hairs out that this is happening right now, but there's more important things to worry about, but could provide hopefully a little relief. So we're hopeful in the tennis world that both the U.S. Open and the French Open happen, but right now it seems like a 50-50 shot.
Yeah, well, it's actually looking better. I mean, here in France, things are really looking up. Bad numbers are going down every day. People are getting back to more normal life every day. Since last Monday, restaurants have opened, so you know that's important in France. So
well, it would be incredible, and obviously things have to be figured out with players going over to France and others coming to the U.S. New York has been, you know, the epicenter for us. It's you know, the city I grew up in. I love New York City. That's where my tennis academy is. That's part of why we're doing this chat. Just the wanting to get our kids back on the court and hopefully just get people to. If something good comes out of this and more people play tennis, it'll be incredible. And that would be amazing. But in the meantime, the logistics of figuring this all out and how it will be handled and who can come with them is a big issue. So I hope it's worked out. I'm ready to go. You know, I'm chomping at the bit. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm hopeful that I'll be in Paris at the end of September. Absolutely. And you know, want to get back to New York, get back to my club. It hasn't been open for the past 3 months. They're starting to open clubs and things around New York, but not yet in the city. So hopefully that's going to change soon. But of course, the violence and the protests that have taken place have pushed everything back as well. So hopefully things will start to settle down. But, you know, there's extremely important issues we're dealing with in our country right now.
Of course. I see Summers Chandler, you know her or him, saying, I can't wait to get back to my JMTA Academy. Hi, John.
You know, Summer's one of our best, great kid and best players, and I can't wait to, you know, take her on. You know, it's in a couple of years, I don't know if I'll be able to beat her anymore. So I got to get her out there while she's still young.
Nice, nice. Speaking of live sports, you can enjoy your Bundesliga as Boris Becker is. That's one of the sports that has started again, and they're playing with no crowds. And for sure, I mean, it's weird, but like you said, but it's better than not having it at all. So in the meantime, we'll take it, right?
Yeah, I guess that's the best way of putting it. You know, I've had mixed feelings about that because you want to put together a product that people are proud of, and obviously people are starved for sports. It's a big part of the fabric of our society. But then when you see things like this pandemic happen and the subsequent riots and protests that are taking place because of the killing of an unarmed black man, you think to yourself, well, obviously sports takes a back seat. And so you have to try to find that fine line to sort of make it where our priorities are in order, but that we're able to blow off some steam and to be able to see something that we've grown accustomed to over the course of the last 50, my entire lifetime, but, you know, going back 50, 100 years in certain sports. So this is extremely delicate time in the world, and particularly our country. Hopeful that things are going to be changing now, finally. It's been a long time coming, so it would be nice to see that happen here. And then I think the doors would be even more wide open for people wanting to see sports. And, you know, there's an opportunity for tennis because there's a lot of leagues, the NBA for one, basketball, hockey, and football, our American football, as well as soccer, you call football, figuring out when can they come back, how can they do that. And if the US Open happened and the French Open, that could be an opportunity for us to showcase our sport. I've always felt, or certainly the last 20, 30 years, that we've been underrepresented, certainly on the men's side, but in general, you know, in terms of the excitement around the sport, which I'd like to see change, the affordability, accessibility, a lot of the same issues that we have in tennis are what people are frustrated over here. You know, we're talking about heroes that are nurses that go in to hospitals to try to save people's lives, and they're not being adequately taken care of in terms of salary, protected. The drivers that drive FedEx or the people that are delivering the Amazon boxes, you know, so someone's got to step up and actually do something. So I'm hopeful that this will take place. But there's an opportunity, having said that, if the events do take place, our two majors that have remained to be played, unfortunately, with Wimbledon canceling, it would be a great opportunity potentially to showcase what we're made of and what we can do out there.
Okay, well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk about Roland Garros. Let's talk about you and Roland Garros. Let's start with the beginning. Was just yesterday, 1977. I was personally 3 years old, and you were playing a second round match against, well, you won your first round, and then you played a second match against Phil Dent, father of Taylor Dent, in fact. And he beat you in 5 sets. You remember that match, I'm assuming, or you have memories or flashes or...
Well, you know, yes, it would be the short answer. I was sent over for the first time. Times are different now. By myself, I was the #1 junior in the world, sent over to play the juniors. I had a friend, Mary Carrillo, who also played on the tour for a few years. Has become a commentator over the course of the last 30-something years. And she grew up very close to me. So we decided, because we could get in, that we'd play mixed doubles as well. And so I decided to play in every event. I was in the juniors, I was in the men's doubles, I was in the mixed doubles, and I was in men's singles, which I qualified for. I got in. So I had like some pretty strong history on clay. And the only events that I'd won in the juniors growing up were clay court events. So I actually, the game that people associate me with in the aggressiveness and the net play hadn't really come into play yet, because I hadn't really gotten big enough, strong enough, or quick enough to be able to do what's necessary to cover the court, basically.
Right.
But it was coming around then. But at that time, I got in. I remember my late great friend, Vitas Gerulaitis, said to me, you're going to go to Europe the first time. You're going to play someone in a qualifying at the French that you've never heard of, and you're going to lose to him. And I played a guy in the first round of the qualifying, and I was down 6-2, 2-love, and I was hitting every ball to his backhand, because that's what you did. You figured people's backhand were worse than their forehand. And then it dawned on me, when I was in the desperation moment, finally said, maybe I should try to hit a ball or two to his forehand. And it turned out he had one of the worst forehands on the tour. And I came back and beat him, qualified, won my first round in straight sets. And Phil Dent was pretty heralded, a top 25 player. He ended up making the semis the year I lost to him. And we battled, and, I got up 2-1. And in those days, you took the 10-minute break to go back to the locker room. And if one of the players wanted, he chose to do that. He came back on the court, and he was serving virtually underhand the first game of the fourth set. I broke him. I said, this is over. I got this guy. He's toast. I don't know what's wrong with him, but he can't even lift his arm. I don't know, he's doing rope-a-dope or whatever he did, but he fooled me. And the next thing I know, I was down 5-3 in the fifth set and lost 6-3. And there was a lot of bad calls. I know this is hard to believe for the people watching out there, but there was a lot of bad calls in my favor. So I was like, balls that were this far in, the umpires and linesmen were calling out. And I was saying, I can't take that. Because when I was growing up in the juniors, you call your own lines. So I kept doing that. And 6-7 times I said, look, we got to play a let. That ball was so far in. And after the match, Phil Dent said to me, he put his arm around me. He goes, son, this is the pros now. If you want to question a call, because he never did it back to me. So I was like, it couldn't have been all one-sided. He goes, if you want to question a call, you got to go to the umpire. And ironically, a month later or so, I played him in the quarterfinals of Wimbledon. And I thought to myself, I'm going to take him up on his offer. And the rest is history.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you even took him up on his offer even before, because I think that you played juniors at the same time as you were playing singles, and apparently, things didn't go that well with a few officials.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
I think that people can say that because it's very easy to say, oh, McEnroe was yelling at all the officials when he was in the juniors. I dare you to find any footage of me yelling at umpires when I grew up, because first of all, there were no officials to yell at. So how could I yell at an official? There aren't any officials.
No. I mean at the French.
You mean in the juniors?
In the juniors of the French, you had a chair umpire there.
Oh, we had one chair umpire, but I was able to get through that event pretty handily. I beat Yvonne in the semis. I'll trade him the semis of the juniors for the finals of the '84 French, if he's okay with that.
Well, I'm speaking with him on Monday. I'll ask him.
Yeah, ask him if he could send me that trophy. And in the finals, I won pretty easily in front of 3 people. There was 3 people at the match because we were playing concurrently during the men's final. Guillermo Vilas was playing Brian Gottfried, so we got the short end of the stick there. So I don't think there was a whole lot of controversy in my matches in the juniors, as much as I'd like to tell you there was.
But do you think that this advice that he gave you, is that something that kind of was an eye-opener for you, and that is it also was part of the reason why you became what you became in terms of, you know, arguing with officials and I don't know, was that the first
It's
time
all his fault. It's all Phil Dent's fault. There's a lot of factors that sort of build up to this time and moment and the sport they were in, and the fact that the big breakthrough came a few weeks later at Wimbledon. And so then all of a sudden there was this attention that, you know, came my way that I wasn't expecting. And so a lot of people started to look at me differently, but it was also because you felt like an opportunity to express yourself in a way, and you didn't have to just say like, oh, okay, I accept everything. There was some very poor officiating. I know I'm biased, but there was some very poor officiating back in the day. They have electronic equipment. You can get a replay, you know, that, you see my hair? See, I may have the same color hair as you if I had this electronic equipment. That's a good dye job. That's a good dye job. No, I'm kidding. We could try to go to the grave of Sigmund Freud or some psychologist, you know, psychiatrist, to figure out why this eventually happened. But a Pandora's box was opened around that time, and then it just sort of exploded and became bigger than life in a way. But at first, I had a lot of fun with it. You know, I thought it was funny the way people reacted to it. I didn't understand why they thought it was a big deal that I was questioning a line call. I mean, it seemed like that would be something that people would be able to understand. Like, to me, tennis is an extremely frustrating sport. So the person that would be the average Joe that plays tennis would behave more like me than they behave like Bjorn Borg. I mean, Bjorn Borg is an aberration. He had like unbelievable self-discipline. He was able to internalize everything and not show anything whatsoever, which I couldn't even do in practice when I was having fun. So I think that in a way, people related to my frustration and understood that in a way, even though like there was times where I went over the line and people wouldn't agree with it, and I would justifiably criticize then. But a lot of times I think people could relate to that and got behind me in a way.
Right. Did you ever feel like it got to a point where people were waiting for that? They came to see you for that, and that you felt it also, and you needed to give that to them, even though you maybe didn't want to?
Yeah, well, only for the last 35 years or so. You know, in the beginning, I didn't think that way, but some people may disagree. But I was so into like what I was doing. I was just trying to win everything and try to find an edge on whatever way I could pump myself up, whatever it was that it was going on amongst some would consider chaos. Others, you know, feel more comfortable in those situations. You know, some people thrive under situations where it could be sort of considered like out of control, where others don't handle it in the same way. And then people handle something else differently better. So, you know, there was a level of, even though it was sort of crazy, I still felt like I didn't lose my concept. The key is like being able to continue to concentrate and focus and to drive yourself, no matter what's happening. So if you can do that, I wasn't worrying about anything else. When I had children of my own, I think is when I started to think that it was a really bad habit that I wasn't even sure why I didn't have the same fire in my belly in a way, which of course hurt my tennis career. But my heart wasn't into it in the same way. It didn't seem like it made as much sense to continue to do that. So then it became sort of like where they were expecting it, and you almost felt like I was doing it because they wanted it. Certainly over the course of the last 25, 30 years when I've been playing, you know, on the Champions or Seniors Tour, that's the joke is I used to get fined if I yelled at an official. Now I get fined if I don't. So that's sort of what's happened. But it's sort of ironic in a way. And I don't know if it's sad or good or bad, or sad or laughable, but maybe a combination of everything. But it's sort of, in a way, worked out in the end, I guess.
Yeah, you could say so. You could say so. That's an understatement. What about, so I want to talk to you real quick about the movie, the Borg McEnroe movie, because you're talking about Borg and this and that. What is your thought about that movie? And do you feel like they were they stuck with it? Were they true to you, or and did Shia LaBeouf do a good job? Or because I saw the movie and I thought it was great, and I didn't have all the insight when I saw it because there were obviously details that came throughout that movie, but it seemed like he put on a good job at showing how there was some inner torture in you. You were tortured a bit, and that I found really interesting.
I thought, you know, first of all, I'd like to say that it's disappointing when they do a movie about you and one of my great friends and greatest rival ever, a guy who I love, Bjorn Borg, and that ultimately we're not involved at all, which is disappointing. You know, I never met Shia LaBeouf. He did reach out at one point through email or a friend, I don't recall exactly, and I was planning on meeting with him if that could be helpful to him. But we can never work out anything with the producers. They said, well, the budget's too low and, you know, we can't pay you much of anything. And I said, well, okay, if you can't pay us much of anything, why don't you just give us, you know, a cut of the, if God forbid, you know, these movies, sports movies very rarely make money, but they're hopefully entertaining, but you give us a cut only if it does well. Well, we can't do that either. You know, I'm like, why? I don't understand that. So unfortunately, it never worked out that I was a part of it in any way.
Very strange.
And so that was too bad. There's also parts, you know, I guess movies embellish things that, you know, just aren't true, like the ending, for example. And there was another point where they insinuated, it appeared to me, my best friend at the time, Peter Fleming, that I hit his ankle brace right before we went on the court at Wimbledon. And I'm like, no, that would not be, because honestly, the score would have been the same whether he had it on or not. And I love Peter as well, but that's the bottom line in that particular situation. And so, but I thought, putting that aside, Shia LaBeouf, I thought, did a good job. I don't think it was a bad movie. It was obviously a Scandinavian production, so there was sort of,
it was more
little bias towards Bjorn, but you know, the guy looked a lot more cut. I wish Shia LaBeouf had pumped up his legs a little more, because my legs aren't that skinny, or they weren't that skinny. Now they're getting too skinny. But the bottom line is, it was amazing in a way that they do a movie about you. It's incredible. So you want to see it done right, and then I just feel like it could have been better had we been a part of it.
Yeah. Okay, that's very strange. Very strange. I would assume that you were totally consulted on that and everything, but okay, interesting. Good to know. Good to know. I will, next time I see it, if I see it again on a plane or something, I'll look at it with a different, definitely with a different look. I want to talk about I want to fast forward to 1984. Yeah, you remember that year? Rings a bell?
Unfortunately, you know, it was my greatest year. You know, it's the year that I actually felt like I had made progress. I finally got to where I wanted to get to on a tennis court. You know, right, that I had taken it up another notch, and that I was really taking it to people. And so the greatest feeling I ever got in my life was on a tennis court, was walking out in the finals. The round of applause I got from the fans there, you know, brought chills to my spine, because it was, it felt like I had like support of like 90% of the crowd, and that didn't happen very often. So there was a kinship with the French fans. You know, they're very emotional as well, and they get into it. And so I feel like we could relate to each other in a way. And it all sort of came together, this perfect storm. And it was just going to just win this event. I just wanted to prove that I could win on everything and be the best on any surface. And I was doing that. And,
yeah, you were up to
and I did it. You know, I was a set away. I was 5 points away. So it happened to be how much time do we have so I can make up the excuses to why I lost? But
as
the
much
bottom
time
line
as you
is,
want, as much time
yeah,
as you want.
it was that somehow I would manage to get a crowd that was 90% for me at the beginning, 75% against me by the end. So that was a unique McEnroe trait that I don't think anyone would want. But when I desperately needed them at the end, because it turned out to be one of the few hot days at that event, when it went into a fourth, and I was 5 points away in the fourth set at 4-3, 40-30 serving.
Yeah, 4-3, 40-30.
And so I obviously should have gotten through that, but I didn't. When I needed them, when I started to get tired, fatigued, because it was very hot that day, that's when I had lost him, because I had, made a couple dumb moves, yelled at some guy, camera guy, and expressed frustration. And it was really probably more of anything, just what ended up happening was that I choked, basically, is the bottom line. And I could sort of, it was all happening too easily in a way. So I don't know why. I should have just let it happen. But, the good news, if there is good news from this, the worst loss of my career, is that I was able to turn things around and continue to play well and win the other two majors at the end of the year, and hopefully become a better person for it ultimately, because I've had to live with this for 36 years, that I screwed this up and that I didn't win the French, because I thought I would say, okay, I'll come back next year and win it because I blew this. And then I felt like I should have won it the next year. And then I lost to Mats in the semis. And the following year, my son was born, my first son, and I didn't play the French Open. And then from that point forward, I never really gave myself a chance to, put the time in that's necessary to try to do well and win an event like that.
Yeah. Well, you did have, in '88, you maybe played your best match, or arguably one of your best matches on court number one versus a very young Michael Chang. Do you remember that?
Yes. That was the only player in my entire career that, as we were walking on the court, he said, "I'd like, nice to meet you, Mr. McEnroe." He called me Mr. McEnroe. So I said, I think I got this guy, or else he's, because I'm older than his dad or something. I don't know. He was only 16, I think, at the time. And the following, and amazingly, because I did play a really good match and beat him handily, and amazingly, the next year he won the thing. I'm like, how the hell did this happen? It was an act. It was like an act of God, if you believe in someone up above. That Michael, when the Tiananmen Square massacres took place, that he won that. So I'm hopeful that something along those lines will happen when our sport gets back to playing. It's something magical is going to happen when we finally get back on the court.
At the end of that match, I was watching the highlights. At the end of that match, you were throwing your arms all over the place, like rarely people saw you do at the end of a match. You were like waving to the crowd and bowing again and saluting. And there was something special, something different. You lost 4 games. I don't know.
Honestly, I wish I had done that more often. One of the traits that I admire about Roger Federer, among others, is that he just looks to be absolutely loving what he's doing. And most players have that angst, and they're all wound up so tight, and then you're fidgeting. I was a fidgeter. Rafa's a fidgeter. Everyone's got their twitches and tics and things, and you get so worked up that it's hard to really enjoy the moment. I think Rafa does a much better job than I do too, letting it out and pumping himself up. And there were so many times where I felt like I wanted to let loose in a more positive way, but I felt like if I did, I was sort of grew up thinking that you lose your edge and you perhaps let your opponent back in the match. So I kept hammering away until the bitter end, and then I didn't look like I was happy out there. And it's an incredible feeling to be at a Grand Slam event, whether it's the French, Wimbledon, US, you name it, Australia. You get out there and you get a crowd that's involved, and you rise to the occasion and you do your thing and people appreciate it. That's what it's all about. That's why you put all the hard work in, and it's an incredible feeling that I still miss. You know, I'm 61 years old now, and I've been lucky that I've been able to sort of move into some other things. I love having my tennis academy. I love being able to be a backseat driver and be a commentator and go out and play in the Champions Tour and be part of the sport, but you still miss that rush of,
Sure,
you know, getting out in the center court of one of the big ones, anyone, but especially the big ones, and doing your thing, you know. So it's you reflect and think, let's try to look at the positive more. You know, there's certainly, the French was littered with sort of matches that I felt like I blown or, you know, should have won, and of times where I should have played and didn't, and times where, you know, I needed to be more prepared and I wasn't. And, you know, you have to live with that. But I still want to feel like at the end of the day, when I, you know, hopefully set an example with anyone that's listening now, the kids at my academy, to focus more on the good things, appreciate what I was able to do, the experiences I had, even when they sometimes resulted in a loss, and to be hopefully a better man for that.
Well, you definitely, Mark, look, if you can see on the screen, Frankie.Mac says, I was there, court number 1 in '88. So, I mean, these things, they stay with people. I mean, I was on center court in '84 for the final against Ivan, and I remember vividly you serving a first serve, missing it. You did a serve and volley. Your first serve was out. Ivan slapped the ball back anyways. You caught it, and you yelled 1 out of 50. And for some reason, that stuck with me. I remember it as if it was yesterday. But these moments that you gave to the crowd, and I think people are, I mean, to this day, everybody's generation, from any generation, knows exactly who you are, whereas it's not the case for other players. So
that was a very gentle trash talk. You know, we got into it a little rougher than that, but in those days it was sort of fun, because when I came up with Connors around, Nastasi, but especially Connors, he'd be going off on me, and so I just felt like I had to defend myself. And then one thing leads to another, and it starts happening with a few other players. Ivan would be obviously another one. We didn't exactly have the same personalities or approach things the same way, but ultimately, I like to think we made each other better players, and I think that we respect each other, what we did on the tennis court. I respect what he did, and hopefully he respects what I did, and that we're better for it. But you don't see that. Maybe in a way, it might be nice to see that a little bit more out there. Yeah. You know, when the players go at it a little more.
Was he your biggest rival at Roland Garros, Ivan Lendl?
Well, Mats and him were the two, you know, toughest ones that I, you know, thought that I could overcome and didn't. You know, I had success in shorter matches against them on clay and obviously other surfaces. And, you know, Mats was, you know, mentally a Wilander, one of the all-time toughest competitors mentally in my book. You know, a player who didn't beat himself. Ivan got himself to that level of fitness that was only Borg was one of the few that was, you know, close to that level, but tried to make himself like Superman out there. And that certainly helped his belief and eventually helped him win all the majors he did win. And so certainly those two guys were the toughest guys that I wasn't able to overcome at that event. That was extremely frustrating, because I knew it was not going to be easy, but I knew I could do it also, and I didn't, which is disappointing.
A third of your losses, you only lost 10 times, but a third of them was against him.
Yeah, no, I lost to Ivan 3 times, I believe, and Mats twice, I believe. So that was that hurt. And you know, some at the end were when I wasn't able. You know, I had a couple of children couple kids by that time, and I wasn't able to balance that the way you got to commit and go there a lot earlier than I was able to play the Romes of the world and at the time Hamburg and some of the other events to build up to get that belief, you know, and that requires a lot, just like when Europeans come to the States and have to spend a month before or 5 weeks before they get to the US Open to try to get ready, and same thing, but that adds up to a lot of time and a little bit trickier when you have kids. So it's another thing that, you know, you see when they have the bigger entourages now. Roger's got 4 kids. The fact that he's able to focus and, you know, maintain this level is just unbelievable. I have no idea how he does it. I wish I did. And even some of the other guys, you know, that are, I mean, it's easier, obviously. You can go on your own plane and do things differently, perhaps, than them. But nonetheless, it's still very
match rhythm is match rhythm, right? Match rhythm. You can't make up match rhythm, even if you travel on a private jet.
No, but you know, it helps. You know, I'm sure it helps some of these things, and you need the right support system, and that's what, you know, that is a key thing, and a comfort level. So, you know, I was never one that liked a lot of people around me. I'm not an entourage guy.
You were never coached, right? You never had a coach. Did you ever have a coach?
You know, I had a couple coaches towards the end, but I never really. I tried a few times to travel with coaches, but really didn't do much of that, and preferred just to go with my buddies. You know, my best friend or my girlfriend, or at the time, or that was sufficient to me. Not, you know, I played doubles. I try to keep sharp. Though I didn't feel like I needed a coach.
Were you think you were uncoachable?
No, I think I was coachable, but
Okay.
you know, I was able to filter things better in the beginning, because it's not as if people didn't give me advice. I mean, Don Budge, who won the Grand Slam in 1938, watched me play. Yvonne came up to me and said, "I think you should attack more up the middle." You know, he said to me one time, and I'd lost him a handful of times in a row at the time. I go, maybe that's a good idea. Now it seems obvious if you go approach up the middle, cut some of the angle off, but you know, I hadn't been really thinking that way. And then lo and behold, I played him and did that and beat him, you know. So I had a great coach, by the way, a former Mexican Davis Cup player and former Wimbledon doubles player. His name was Antonio Palafox. Absolutely tremendous coach. I think one of the best coaches that's been around. And he taught me how to play, and it took a while for me to figure it out, because it was sort of like figuring out geometry when you're studying a math class. But when it all clicked in, it all started to make sense, you know, looking at the court like an equation almost. And so I would call him and work with him in New York. He didn't travel with me, but I would call him my coach, and he was absolutely outstanding at that. And I had other people that I would take advice from.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
My dad would be one. He'd always, you know, his important word of advice, he'd be like, "John, go out there and win the last point."
That's good advice.
God, how long did it take you to figure that out? But you know, he was just, you can do it. You can do it. I believe in you. So, you know, if you have people around you that believe, that helps and support you. And so all these things come into play.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, for sure. I just want to finish off with this 84 match. Last thing I want to talk about is the trophy ceremony, which was a bit controversial because you sort of walked away from it without taking the microphone, which was the tradition, and speaking. I mean, you were gutted.
Well, I have to interrupt there because
okay. Go ahead. Tell the story.
I don't know when the tradition began, and I think it's a nice tradition that people speak now, but it was definitely not a tradition then. You did not speak as a runner-up. I'm not even sure Yvonne spoke at that first one. I don't know when the first year was, but I'm pretty sure he didn't speak. It wasn't, you know, when I won Wimbledon a month later, we didn't speak on the court at Wimbledon either. Now you have, you know, Fabrice Santoro and Cedric Pioline interviewing them before they go up to the, you know, ceremony, and then they're talked to by the French Federation president, and he says something, and then they say, you know, a speech in Spanish, what's usually Spanish, obviously.
A little bit of French
12 times.
It's
and then
moved
they can speak in English, and they show that they're very worldly, and it's awesome. And then they come onto the court, and because I do the event for NBC, and then they speak to me, and then so by the time they've made 4 speeches, so in a way, I sort of wish that I was able to speak. Actually, I mean, I don't know if that particular moment when I have the most devastating loss of my career, as it turned out, I didn't realize it'd be at the time.
right.
But it was. I always tried to lose with dignity and give credit where credit was due. I believe I did that, and I believe I would have done that, as painful as that was.
Okay. I'm just going to say that year, you're 82-3. You have a 96.47% victory ratio, which is to this day the highest win-loss ratio of all times.
Maybe I should have quit after that year.
I don't know, but I mean, what a year! What a year! Novak was approaching that record, and then
Roger would have tied it one year. He was playing the finals of the Masters, and I had a bit of I think David Nalbandian actually was playing him, and he was 81.
at the Masters final.
Yeah, and he was going to tie my record. He was going to be 81-4, 82-3 if he won that match.
And he was up 2-6.
Yeah, and Nalbandian, was sort of, I think he was irritated at me because he had heard I made some comments about him that I don't know, I didn't even remember, but he wasn't trying hard enough in a match, which I've always had problems with any player that doesn't give 100% in a match. But at any rate, Nalbandian, who is a great, very talented player, played, as you said, came back from behind and, won this match in 5 sets. And David, I thank you because I guess I owe you, because that's the one record I may still have for a while.
Yeah, maybe how do you know?
I've lost most of the others, so.
No, but that's a nice one. That's a nice one to have. Yesterday, in your place was somebody else who has, well, not a similar career to yours, not quite as, it's different, but a similar personality a little bit, in the person of Marat Safin. Also someone who very tortured on court. This is him saying it, not me. In any case, he said the world about you, and I asked him for a question. And his question was, and I'll try and do it with the Russian accent because we were supposed to do it video, but something went wrong. So try and imagine Marat saying this to you. John, why were you so angry on the court?
As you can imagine, I've been asked this before.
I can imagine.
And I don't have the definitive answer. I can't tell you. I grew up in New York. It's a loud and intense environment. There's a lot of aggressive people there to begin with. You have to sort of be that way to survive in the city, which, by the way, I hope comes back to the full glory that I think it's the greatest city in the world. I love Paris. Paris is the most beautiful city, but New York, to me, I'm biased. And then, my parents was allowed dinner table. There's no question about it. And they drove me to try to be the best I can be. And then falling into this situation and being thrust into, happened to me at 18 when I went to Paris for the first time. And, I'd never been to Europe before, and then went to Wimbledon and broke through there. My life completely changed, and it was sort of happened real quick. So I, believe it or not, I was pretty shy when I grew up, so it was a lot to take in and figure out. So sometimes you express your fear of failure by trying to sort of hide behind something else. Like, you don't want to, it's better to look angry than cry, or look scared, so that was part of why I try to approach it that way. But ultimately, I was definitely getting too angry out there, and it hurt me, a lot. Sometimes it helps, and get your intensity up, get myself to try harder. I mean, that's the key to me. The greatest quality Nadal's got and he's got a lot of great qualities, is that the guy plays every point like it's his last point he's ever going to play, just like Connors did when I played him. And that's an admirable quality. So that was something that I strive for. And in order to do that, I sort of felt like I had to have that edge. I wish I didn't, but I did. So I wasn't able to ultimately enjoy the moments as much as I would have liked, because I was too busy getting worked up over something.
Right.
I have a racket here, by the way, and a pair of sneakers that hopefully we're going to auction off that I played. This is not my old, I was going to say an old wood racket, but I don't have any. I can't find any of those. And I have a John McEnroe Tennis Academy jacket. So hopefully some money will be raised for a great cause. Try to allow some more kids to play this wonderful sport. But we'll put it up on your website or whatever it is to hopefully see if we can get a couple more kids playing this great game.
It will definitely happen. So we're coming to a close. Before we have two more things to do. One is tomorrow's guest is Arantxa Sanchez, who you obviously know. What does Arantxa Sanchez mean to you? What is it? What feelings does it bring up?
Well, first of all, say hello to Arantxa for me. You know, I had a couple battles with her brother, her older. Well, they're both older, but it's her oldest brother. I even played her younger brother, Javier. But the thing with Arantxa is that she was one of the great fighters on the tennis court that I've ever seen. She made the most out of her ability. And so the question I'd like you to ask her for me would be, why wouldn't she ever play a mixed doubles event with me? Because I think if we had played together, we would have won some majors.
Okay. I mean, it's not too late. It's not, I'm just going to say that.
I think it is, actually.
Okay, and so before we go, the last thing that we do, my tradition, this is a tradition, and it has been forever. I'm just going to go ahead and say that so you can't walk away. Just kidding. Quiz, 3 questions, okay?
All right.
First question, do you remember the very first time you played on the center court of Roland Garros?
I believe the first time I played on the center court of Roland Garros was when I played the finals of the mixed doubles.
Okay.
I played the second time, as maybe what you're looking for. I played a late great friend of mine, Patrice Dominguez, I believe was the second time.
I think,
is that right?
Well, I had one other time before, I think, but maybe I'm wrong, because I've been getting a lot of things wrong tonight. I'll admit.
I'd see 78. I didn't play in 78 because I had to play the NCAAs, so I couldn't play the France. In 79, I believe my first round opponent was Dominguez that year.
It was in 77. It was in 77.
77. Oh, yeah. Okay. Then it would be the semis of the juniors.
Exactly. Against Ivan Lendl.
Yeah. Well, that's the one. When you talk to him, see if he probably won't do it, but if he's willing, I'll maybe throw in a couple bucks to change. I'll give him my junior trophy, and he gives me one that French Open men's.
Yeah. So wait, you played. You never beat him in the men's, but in the juniors. No. But in the juniors, you beat him.
I beat him that year in the juniors. I lost to him 3 times in the men's. Yeah.
Okay. I'll ask him. I promise you I will ask him. I promise you I'll ask him. Do you remember your first and last main draw matches at Roland Garros? Ever? The first ever and the last ever?
My first match was
Australian
a guy by the name of Alvin Gardner.
Wow.
In 1977, I beat him 6-4, 6-3, 6-love. And my last match, I believe, was against a top junior player, young guy, I believe, Nicholas Culte, I believe. He ended up beating Chang in, I believe, the 3rd round. I lost him in a close match, and another match that I should have won that I lost, and I think it was 4 sets, and then he went on to get to the 4th round, I think.
Yeah, it's exactly right. Amazing memory, by the way. Amazing memory. You're one of those guys who, like, you remember all these matches, all these points, scores, stuff like that, or you study it
I remember
regularly? Or?
a fair amount. I don't remember everything, but unfortunately, you seem to remember more of your losses than your wins. But yeah, the last couple years was frustrating for me at the French because I didn't feel like I gave myself the proper opportunity to do what I had to do. So that was too bad. But you know, you live and learn.
Right.
Maybe my next life.
Yeah. Or maybe with your mixed doubles career coming up with
Yeah.
Arantxa. And the final one is out of the 35 matches. Well, you should have answered that, but out of the 35 matches you played, you only faced off with one Frenchman.
Oh,
So
only one. Okay. Well, I'll tell you the score. It's 7-6, love and love.
that's exactly the score. That's exactly the score.
You know,
Patrice,
he was a fellow lefty, and he was giving me a hard time on the center court. And then once I got that first set under my belt, I took out my frustration on him.
yeah. But as you mentioned, so he passed away a few years ago. But a big person in the French tennis, was the head of French tennis. In fact, of the technical aspect of the game, and yeah, he's deeply missed. Anyways, amazing job. Amazing. I've never had somebody answer so easily all my questions. I usually try and stump people, but I should have tried harder with you.
Well, next time you ask me a tougher question, like who we lost to in the second round of the doubles in 19. You know, I only played doubles twice. I wish I had played more, but
I was gonna say I actually looked for that. I was trying to find what were your best doubles results was in Paris, and I must admit I didn't find very good results.
well, I only played twice. Once was 77. Me and Ricardo Ikaza, who was a top junior, the number one junior in the world, I believe at the time, a year older than me. We played. We lost to Panada and Bertolucci in the second round, and then. Or was that the first round? I think it was the second round. We think we won a round. And then the last time I played, the only other time I played with a guy, trivia question. See how quickly people can come up with who did I play with in the 1992 French Open doubles? His name, someone's answering. No, Andre Agassi.
Nice.
And I played, and we got to the quarters. And Andre had, I had lost first round to Culte, and I started to do commentary for the first time. But I said, look, let's win this thing. And Andre got nervous because, he had to play Courier, who was, the fittest guy, one of the fittest guys on the tour then in the semis. And he was afraid, I think, that he was going to get something would be taken from his legs, to get a little fatigued if he had to play a couple more doubles matches before. So we weren't able to put forth our best efforts in the quarters, unfortunately, and we went down in the quarters.
Clearly Andre's fault. We both agree, right?
Well, this is when you speak to Andre, he can blame me, but I'm going to blame him.
I love it. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur McEnroe.
Thanks for having me.
Take care. Thank you very much.
Take care, everybody. See everyone soon, I hope. And peace.